Hello, Dr. Rob.
Hey Tammy, how are you?
I'm good. We have questions. So the first one is,
Great.
I am trying to understand addiction. It is a process where the addict has no control. Then how can they be held? Wait. If it is a process where the addict has no control, then how can they be held responsible for cheating? Also, are romantic and emotional visits with prostitutes the same prostitute for 2 years part of the addiction? My husband was encouraged by the prostitute he was seeing to believe that they were in a real relationship, even though he was paying. He spoke about her as if she was his wife on the brothel forums. Is this part of the escalation of the addiction? It was very unhealthy.
Well, that's a lot of questions, Tammy.
Yes.
Would you like to pick one out of there? And
I think start with, because I think the first question is, how can they be, if an addict has no control, how can they be held responsible for cheating? So I think that's a really good basic question about addiction. So I'm just, before we get started, if you have questions, if you'd put them in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, if you've got a comment, throw it in the chat, but questions to the Q&A would be really helpful for me, please. Thanks.
well, so it is a difficult question to answer because I don't necessarily want to hurt my spouse and I don't necessarily want to hurt the people in my life. And I may indeed love them and feel very connected to them, but we do have this thing called compartmentalization where, we kind of divide ourselves into little boxes. And the box for my family and my loved ones and my people, that's a very different box than my sexual acting out. And really, when I'm thinking inside there, I'm not thinking about my family. I'm not thinking about anything except what I want to go do acting out wise. And with my family, I try not to let the other stuff interfere. So I do keep, as an addict, keep things in boxes. And that's part of the illness, by the way, is putting yourself into pieces and only showing people the pieces that they want to see. So, but here's the thing, the person who's the addict, everything, the whole story. And even though it may be a compulsion, it may be driven, it may be feel out of control, I'm still an adult and I make decisions as an adult. And I know that if I'm going to cheat on my spouse, I could also make a decision to go see a doctor. I could make a decision to call a friend. I could make other decisions. I may be compelled and driven to make that one. But even after I make that one, I could go make 100 other decisions to make that better so I don't do it again. But we don't. We keep both parts of our life protected and separate. And we do truly believe and feel that we love you deeply. And we feel that this is something separate from you that doesn't matter. And even if you knew about it, it wouldn't really interfere with your life because it has nothing to do with you. That's how we look at it.
So then the next part of it is, are romantic and emotional visits with prostitutes, the same prostitute for 2 years, part of the addiction? And she goes on to say, my husband was encouraged by the prostitute, of course, because he was paying for it, to be in a relationship. So I was like, that was a good business person.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it matters what box you put it in, whether it's prostitution or affairs or porn and I would also doubt, no offense, that that's all your husband was doing. In my experience, maybe there was somebody else, maybe there was some porn, maybe that he was flirting. It's unusual for someone to just do something for 2 years and not be into something else. So I wouldn't necessarily trust him unless you didn't know that part already.
Let's see. So as part of the escalation of the addiction. So that kind of goes back to what you just said, that it's probably not all.
There's almost always more.
So the next question, Dr. Rob and Tammy, my SNL addict husband and I are 9 months from discovery and 1 month post disclosure. We are both working on our individual recovery and haven't started couples counseling yet. When do you recommend we do that? We are feeling a bit disconnected and wondering if this could help.
Well, I always think that couples counseling can help. And I think that in the beginning, and Tammy and I have talked about this, in the beginning, when it's kind of like, I hate you, you ruined my life, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to ruin your life. Like, there's not a lot you can do in couples therapy in the very beginning because you're just trying to not kill each other. However, excuse me, Tammy, pardon me, I don't mean nothing personal. However, when you move along a little bit in the process, you're going to want to get more underneath things. In the beginning, I think couples therapy is a lot about setting boundaries. Don't talk now. Don't yell at each other then. Don't do this in front of the kids, whatever. later on, when you're more stable, it's about working on the relationship. And that can take 6 to 9 months before I think you're really ready as a couple to do couples work. And then, yeah, bring it on.
Yeah, and I think make sure you work with somebody that's understands addiction and understands betrayal trauma and understands the disclosure process. Sometimes therapists, like if you're both working with your therapist, sometimes they'll do conjoint therapy where the two of your therapists are doing the couples work together. You know, there's lots of different ways to do that, but a general therapist is probably not going to have the skill set to optimize your recovery. So that's my thought on that. Okay, next question. Hi, Rob. I'm an adult male suffering from childhood trauma related to mother enmeshment. My father worked away a lot when I was a child, sometimes for 6 months periods. When my father was away, my mother would take me into her bed and sleep to keep her company. I learned from a very young age that this gave my mother comfort. Nothing physically sexual ever happened, but I often saw my mother naked while she was undressed for bed. This continued till I was about 9 years of age and only stopped suddenly without any explanation after I went to her one day to tell her I was getting itchy in my genital area, which I now know is obviously puberty. I was also relied on as a confidant to keep a lot of things secret from my father, mostly around finances from a very young age. How do I go about making things right with that little boy so I can recover from all of this now as an adult?
Well, that's a lot. Again, more than one question, Tammy. Do you want to break that down a little bit, if you can?
Well, it is one question is how do I go about making things right? It's complex because there's mother enmeshment. There's a high level of mother enmeshment.
Right. Well, this person doesn't say that they're a sex addict. Is that correct? We don't see that here.
That's true. So this is, childhood trauma related to mother enmeshment. So let me share a little bit about this. So
Go ahead.
Dr. Rob did a podcast with Dr. Ken Adams, Overcoming Enmeshment. So it's on that Sex, Love, and Addiction podcast series that I mentioned that you can find on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. And he talks about that, but and many men are who have struggled with inappropriate enmeshment from a parent, typically a mother, can also struggle with relationships and sex addiction, etc. So Dr. Ken Adams that's really his gifted area. So he wrote Silently Seduced and When He's Married to Mom. Both of those books are very helpful. He does workshops, and he's been doing them online that have been helping men heal too. I can't help but think that reaching out to him might be a good next step for you because he really has done some amazing work in helping men heal from the enmeshment aspects. There was a quote that came to me and then it just fleeted back out, but he really can help with that. He has a website, Overcoming Enmeshment, that has some additional information too. But really, this is not, you're stuck. You really can move forward. I know many men that have found, healing and the ability to move forward in a different way, and own their own person as an adult.
And just to say it, parental enmeshment is when a parent turns you more into a husband or a wife than as a child. So if mom takes you into her bed, if she shows you her naked, if she confides in you, then you're really more of a husband than you are a child. And even though there may not be overt touching kinds of incest, there are so many profound ways in which you're told that you're there to make mom feel better and make mom feel happy and make mom feel fulfilled. And of course, that's not a child's job on any level. And it really, it's really about 90% of the sex addicts I work with have this issue in one form or another.
Yeah, it is not atypical. It is problematic, but there is help for that as well. So
yeah.
What is your perception of a partner with an SA 7+ months past discovery who's just gone to his regular therapy meetings and sporadic SCA groups but without participation, and who hasn't taken any independent steps towards recovery on his own, and who claims that not acting out should be good enough for the betrayed partner?
Well, I don't think so.
Yeah.
um,
I'm
so,
like, BS, no way.
well, to
Yeah.
me, recovery requires a very consistent, measured, stable process. And it isn't when I feel like it. It's, in fact, I tell a lot of the guys, put a schedule on your refrigerator that says when you're going to be meetings and what you're going to be doing and when you have therapy. So your spouse will always be reassured about that consistency of what you're doing. They don't question it. So you shouldn't have to be sitting around as a spouse saying, is he going to meetings? When did he go to a meeting? What? It should be right there. So you have no questions, no problem. I mean, you know exactly what's happening, because the goal is to put you at peace of mind, not to have you wondering what's going on next.
Well, and we talk about this all the time too, that the acting out is the symptom. What really is in need of help and is the underlying issues. And so that's like slapping a Band-Aid on and going, well, that's good enough. And you've got a systemic, infection and gangrene and everything else going on. That's gross, but it's true. But anyway, so if he wants to heal and not just be, well, that's good enough and, limp around for the rest of his life, then doing as much for his recovery as he did for his acting out makes it different. So, anyway, so Dr. Rob has said this before, that partners, tend to let addicts get away. First of all, addicts were, charming, manipulative, will wear you down, all of those things. So it's one of those things where you holding a boundary, especially when somebody's telling you, no, the sky is, purple. I don't know why you would think it was blue. It's hard, and it's hard to keep holding those boundaries, but you deserve to have somebody who's in recovery, not just abstinent. And that's the difference. It's like just not doing that. And, like Dr. Rob just talked about with the last one, it's one of those things where there's more. So my suspicion is, and like I talk to people often, and, I start listing, gaming and food and, and all these other things, and vaping and smoking and, alcohol or drugs. And they're like, oh yeah. Well, that's the challenge, is like, if all of these things are an issue and you just don't do one, you're still getting the dopamine. Dr. David Fawcett talks often about cigarettes and why we're a non-smoking facility, because otherwise it keeps that dopamine, just kind of trickling in all the time. So you never really have to deal with the issues, because you're always doing something, that will numb you out or let you be compartmentalized, like Dr. Rob talked about a minute ago. So my invitation to your addict is, if you don't want to be miserable, you can get recovery, because recovery gives us the tools to live life on life's term without just the white knuckling and hanging in there and just not doing whatever that one thing is. So how do I create a dating plan? What do you recommend I include in one? What questions do I ask myself?
Well, we've talked about this a lot, and I think that in order to have a dating plan, it takes a bit of work. First of all, you have to look at your dating history and see what dates have gone well and what dates haven't gone well, and what did I learn from this process. I suggest a dating plan, which we do kind of like a red light, green light, yellow light. And, in the red is like all the things I don't want to do when I date someone. I don't want them to be heroin addict. I don't want them to be married. I don't want them to have no job. And then the yellow lights are like, well, they don't laugh at my jokes. Sometimes they're late, the warning signs. And then the green part is all the good stuff. We laugh together, we share jokes, we have friends in common. So, really, I think that we are not the best daters. And in part, it's really good for us to let other people help us make those decisions. So if you lay out what is healthy dating for you, and then you use other people after your date, before your date, to say, was that a healthy date? Here's my list. You will get feedback, because it's not unusual for those of us who are not particularly good daters to get really lost in the emotion of the thing. And then we really can't tell, is this the right person? Is it, because we're just so fascinated with how wonderful they seem in the early stages of dating. And we lose our ability to intellectually look at who they are. And we really need that intellectual balance. So if you're someone who just gets lost in dating and everyone you date is just the most wonderful person in the world, you can't stop thinking about them, well, that's fine. Just get some people around who are a little more objective, and invest in helping you find a good person and run the person by them, and they'll help you decide.
Yeah, like when the last time I was dating, which was decades ago, but I had if I meet a person, this is what he would be like. And it really was the intangible things. Like I knew, I knew I had some boundaries on things. Like for me, having someone who's a couch potato would be horrible. It would be a really bad fit, so I needed somebody that was active. That was just one thing. But, I didn't have, physical attributes. I hate smoking. So he also could not be a smoker. That was those were two things, but it was a short list.
Did you want someone who's short?
I'm tall, so I wouldn't have wanted somebody super short, but that was not on my list of like he's super tall, but that was not on my list. And the point is, like, it was things that were intrinsic. That was what mattered to me. And like it was a short list. I had talked to my sponsors about it, but it was one of those things where, and he would not be a smoker was as big of a deal as what he would be. But then, I did not settle on any of those things. And that was really important to me, that I had help with creating what the list would be. And then I didn't settle on any of those things. Because if I have to put them in the box and go, well, they're almost, it's 75%, they're still not the right person, because those were my non-negotiables. So I think, like Dr. Rob said, get help, have a community, have your dating posse, you have a plan, and the nice thing is you don't have to do it right from the get-go. You just have to practice, and that's how you're going to learn. So it's good stuff. And report back. We love hearing. And then the next chapter. So
one more thing.
Yeah.
Dating is two people coming in separate cars to a brightly lit, ugly coffee shop and having a cup of coffee, and then leaving in separate vehicles. And then a second date might be going for a walk. Keeping the romance and the sex out of it in the beginning is a really good way for us to date, because we can have more objectivity about who the person is.
So the next question is challenging. How do you feel about a CSAT telling my PA of 29 years that I'm codependent, I'm a victim mentally, in a victim mentality where I enjoy being? My PA didn't have a choice because I pushed him to do it. They have focused only on what I need to work on and how my issues are the problem in the last 4 months. Do you see a problem with this picture? Husband has
what's a PA?
Porn addict.
Okay, I'm going to run to the restroom, Tammy. I think you can start this question. I'll be right back.
Husband has drip fed info since March of last year. So a bunch of things. First of all, unless you were in the room when the therapist and CSAT. So for those of you joining, a CSAT is a certified sex addiction therapist. And transparency, I used to work for the organization that trains and certifies them. And there are lots of them that are great. And there's lots of them that I would never refer to. So just having the letters is really helpful. A good therapist with the CSAT is great. A not good therapist with the letters still won't refer. So, but here's the challenge is, if addicts lie, unless you were sitting in the room and the therapist said that, and you are sitting in the room to hear that, then you don't know. So that's always the challenge. And so the other challenge is it's not a challenge. Here's an opportunity. I would ask to have a meeting with the CSAT or with the therapist and say, I need to, so the Prodependence book on page 75, I've memorized the page, talks about the language that is a prodependent way of looking at relationships. So if you haven't heard of prodependence, Dr. Rob wrote a book, Prodependence, Moving Beyond Codependency. Again, page 75 of the book. It has, and rather than using this term, use this. And it's fair to say, I'd like you to read this book if you haven't. And here's the language that will be helpful to us recovering and being on a healing journey or moving forward. So, and if you have a support therapist that is working with you from a codependent standpoint, have the four of you have a session together so that you can really talk about this. But, Dr. Rob and I have talked about this before too. It's like if his therapist if he's not moving forward in a way that you can see things being helpful, then a higher level of help is needed. So, and I think it's fair to look at the variety of options, which are he needs to go to more therapy with his current therapist. He needs to do things differently. He needs treatment. Seeking Integrity Los Angeles, Dr. Rob works directly with the clients that are there. So not every client all day, but he works every week. He's
A couple
there
of times a week.
times a week. He's working with the clients that are there. So
I
yes.
also just want to throw out, Tami, that, this common theme of spouses getting responsibility for the problem. If you only didn't do this, if you only didn't do that. And, I have to say to you spouses, I say it all the time, but you may not be here when I say it. It is never anything that any of you spouses do that causes us to do what we do sexually. You could stand on the head of a pin. You could gain 50 pounds. You could leave us. What we choose to do is our responsibility. If I'm in an unhappy relationship, I can go play golf. I can get a divorce. I can make lots of decisions other than, well, I'm unhappy, so I'm going to go cheat. That's my decision. That's what I want to do. And there is nothing that a spouse can do to actually, as much as I will say it's your fault, there really isn't anything a spouse can do to make this happen. When this happens, it's something I've chosen all by myself.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, next question. My husband had a long-term emotional affair with a woman he met in sexual chat room. It involved a lot of sexual fantasy like S&M. He continued on in the chat rooms with porn. This went on for 13 years. Could this affair have led to a sex addiction?
I don't think it quite works like that.
Right.
It's more, what was he doing there? And was that all he was doing? And does he have a history of that? And would he have done it with other women despite that? And, it's more than just having an affair. Tami, do you have some thoughts?
No, yeah, I was thinking that too. I was like, this feels like, if he didn't do this, then he wouldn't have a sex addiction. And that isn't, like I was talking about earlier, there were probably other things going on and, and then this led to that and, a higher level of fantasy and more excitement. And, an addict, we're always looking for the next, and more and bigger and better and, whatever. So, the escalation is typical, but I don't know that you can go, well, if he just hadn't done this, then he wouldn't be a sex addict.
Not likely.
In all my years of dealing with my husband's sex addiction, I have often asked the question, is he an addict or an asshole? Do you have any advice on sorting out the difference? Oh my gosh. Because
well,
it doesn't qualify for
I would
both.
say it's probably both.
Yeah.
And so there's no reason to sort the two out. Neither one is something that someone knows how to do with unless they work on it. And they certainly cross lines when you're acting out as a sex addict. You're certainly an asshole. Excuse me. You're so. Tami, what's wrong with you? I can't stop yawning.
It's been a Monday, so I'm thinking you're just having a physical reaction. So
yeah. If you're cheating and lying on your spouse, in a way, it doesn't really matter what you call it. It's still a lack of compassion, a lack of caring. I think the difference may be if you point out what someone is doing over and over again, and they really see the pain that it's causing you, and they really understand, and they just don't care. I think that's more of an asshole. I think someone who says, oh, I really don't mean to cause them this pain, and I can see how it's hurting them, and they just sort of can't help themselves, that's more of an addict. But someone who carries in their being when they're doing it, how much this is hurting you, because addicts tend to push that out of our heads. Someone who can still hold on to, it's kind of like, well, screw her, I'm going to do this anyway, would be more of an asshole. A sex addict would be more like, I don't want to think about her, I don't want anything to do with her, and I don't want even her even in my head, would be more of an addict.
Well, and I think in active addiction, both, but in active recovery, then we better be being a whole lot less of an asshole and a whole lot more of a recovering addict. And so, but in active addiction, it's all about, what do I want? How do I get what I need? That whole, like Dr. Rob was talking about, the compartmentalize, I'm going to focus on what I want to do, not, on caring about my family and everyone else. So I'm going to share the tone of, I won't say who sent it or whatever, but somebody who recently completed Seeking Integrity, his partner reached out and she commented, even in this short time, she can see a difference. And I was like, I got goosebumps and it's hot in Arizona. I got goosebumps when I read that, because I was like, that's what we're looking for, is transformation that is apparent to other people, so that he doesn't go home and continue to be an asshole. He's different, and that, and it's not 100%, and, it's not going to be without its speed bumps, but she noticed. So, okay.
Well, what we're looking for is not just simply for someone to stop the behavior, but for someone to begin to invest in their family life, in their home, in their partner, and not in big ways like splashy jewelry and stuff, but just showing up for the family, just doing the dishes, just showing up to help, just getting off the computer when it's time to meet with the family, and not complaining and whining and being like another child in the family.
Yes. I suspect my best friend is a sex addict. She is making very unhealthy choices and serially cheats on her husband. Each time she acts out, she discloses to me, but it feels like she's bragging each time she acts out, she discloses to me, but it feels like bragging. I feel a lot of guilt not telling her husband, but I also have concerns she is escalating her behavior. How do I broach this with her and not seem judgmental and unsupportive as her friend? I don't want to enable, but worry that she will stop telling me, not change the behavior if I tell her my concerns. That is challenging.
If it were me, and Tammy would disagree, I would tell her what you just said, which is, I see you doing this and I don't know what it means, and I do care about you, and I know that it's going to affect your marriage, and I'm worried that it will. And whether you have an addictive problem or you're just having an affair, as someone who cares about you, this really worries me. It upsets me. I'm not sure I can continue hearing about it, because, you're worried about she'll stop telling you. I kind of wish you would stop telling you, because without any resolution or any direction, it just kind of puts it on your shoulders. Like, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that. She needs to do something about it, or not, but stop sort of blah, blah, blahing about it, especially to someone who cares about her, who's having to listen to this over and over again and think, my friend's going to get in trouble. My friend's not going to do well in this situation. And yet you're caught not wanting to leaving her feeling judged because she confided in you. I think that's kind of a trap for you to be in as her friend. Tammy,
yeah, I do too. Yeah. I think you can share. I've been on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. There's a lot of free resources. There are podcasts for female sex and love addicts. We have a work group that starts on September 25th that is just for female, sex and love addicts, that will go through the Sex Addiction 101 workbook. There are lots of options that we have the drop-in group for women on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So there's options, even if she wants to explore what it could possibly be. But yeah, I have actually told a friend before that, I found out he was cheating, and I told him in no uncertain terms that I, was worried, etc. So I do think being a friend also means stepping into the space of, this isn't okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. My husband said that he did not talk with his best friend, who said that he should divorce me, but I have discovered that they still talk. Do you think I should text this friend saying this is terrible for me?
I'm not sure I understand exactly.
Her husband lied to her. That's basically
Mm-hmm.
what the gist of it is.
Sounds right.
Yeah, I'm like, why bother texting his friend? Why don't you just confront your husband?
Right. It's kind of like I can't believe my husband's having an affair. That woman is awful.
Yes.
It's like, she may or may not be, but what about your husband? It's so easy to put the responsibility on the other person, and much harder to put it on the person that we love when they're actually the ones we need to get mad at.
Yeah.
He put you in this situation. He needs to be responsible for it.
Yeah, and it's his best friend, so it's a challenge, because you're basically, it sounds like, saying you need to choose, and I guess his actions are telling too. So his actions are going to do more than his lips are, his words are. So,
Hey, Tammy, I'm not
yeah,
trying to put on new necklaces or I have a little bit of a dislocated shoulder, and so I
I
keep
know you
putting on
do.
things to hold my arm up. So,
Oh, that's what it was. I
like
saw
I got a
things
little,
going, but I didn't know
no,
what
I've
it
got a
was.
sling. I've
Oh,
got a sling,
good.
and
He's in pain. I knew he wasn't 100%, so he's
I
in
am
pain.
in pain.
So,
That's
okay, so
true.
hang with us. Thanks for, these are great questions too. So after being away due to the pandemic for 6 months, I will have to face and confront my addicted husband in order to, I guess, separate. The betrayal of 37 years of marriage is too much for me to resist, mainly because his unwillingness to commit to recovery. My problem is that I just can't have a conversation with this 63-year-old man that has behaved like a teenager. How do I talk to him in a productive way?
Well, I'm not sure what that means, Tammy. I mean, if I was going to divorce or leave somebody, I couldn't guarantee that that was going to be productive. It may just not be productive. And so I'm not sure. I don't know if it's ever productive when you say, hey, you're not working out things the way I want you to, and I'm leaving you. Like, so I'm just curious, what would productive, if productive
See,
means
I think that's very
getting him
productive.
to change,
Yeah.
getting him to change things by telling him that you're leaving, that's never productive. So what does she mean by productive?
Well, to me, I looked at it as that is very productive. I would have a set. I mean, I would have bullet points. I'd have a script, whatever I needed to say. But it would be, I'm standing up for myself. I can't continue to do this. I wish, in a very codependent way, I wish I could support you in your recovery. I can't do what you are unwilling to do. So, for that reason, we need to part ways, and after all, that's a long time. And, I don't know if you've got kids, but it's kids, grandkids, like there's always those, navigating that. Hopefully you can find a way to do it, that is kind to you, but doesn't make it so the kids have to decide too. So something else, Dr. Rob?
No, I'm just miserable. I'm trying
I
to
know,
find a
I'm sorry.
comfortable position.
Okay. So my partner has been an addict for his entire adult life, started at 12. I came along 7 years later, 30 years later, finally in, I think, actual recovery. That's great. But how long is it even possible for his ego-driven, referential, narcissistic way of relating to others, even apart from his addictive behaviors, to truly improve? Or in your experience, will this be his go-to way of being, even if he does get a little better with lots of support from me to do so? So what
Well,
I
I
don't
think,
hear, hang on, what I don't hear is, like, how long has the recovery process been? Because, like, that's a long time, 30 years in finally. And, like, is this 3 weeks in, or like he's been in recovery for a year and you're still not seeing improvement? Like I shared a little bit ago, we had somebody for 14 days and his partner could see a marked change. So it depends on what level of help he's getting. So, Dr. Rob?
yeah, I also think
Oh, 1 year in
that,
recovery. Okay.
we hear this a lot. Like, my husband or wife has changed their behavior. They've gotten out of the addiction, but they're still a jerk, and we hear that a lot. Or they're still narcissistic. And you have to understand that while we can learn how to not act out and begin to get ourselves together in terms of being available for you, we still don't necessarily know how to be the kindest. Excuse me. We still don't know how to be it's what my shoulder hurts. I'm yawning. We still don't know how to be the kindest, most loving people. I mean, that takes a long time. And so just because we know we've hurt you and know we've hurt you down and let you down and wish we could do things to make you feel better, sometimes we're not always capable of it in the beginning. Sometimes we're just capable of not acting out. And that's about as much as we can do in the beginning. And it's not that you spouses don't deserve us to be warmer, nicer, kinder. It's just that we're not ready to. We don't know how, and we don't know how to do it sincerely. And so you are way ahead of the game in terms of what you deserve from us. It's just that we're not always able to provide it.
Well, and you didn't include what he's doing. So it's a year in, but if he's just not acting out, that isn't really, it goes back to what I was talking about earlier. If he's pursuing his recovery with the same energy that he pursued the addiction, he'll do great and you'll see a marked change quickly. But most most addicts are less likely to do that. So it'll be like, well, I'm going to see my therapist once a week or once every couple weeks. And, that's 50 minutes. I'm just going to talk about the chaos because like you and I are fighting. And so, whatever. But it's not really, I go back to the Band-Aid. If you're just slapping a Band-Aid on, what is, his entire adult life at age 12, that's not even an adult yet, and he's been dealing with that. So I bet there's underlying trauma, abandonment, abuse, neglect, loss. There's something under there, and it's going to take a lot of work to pick away at that, particularly if all he's doing is going to a therapist once a week. I don't know how many 12-step meetings he's going to. Does he have a sponsor? What is his level of engagement in the recovery process? That will determine how much he changes and how quickly. So,
Hey, Tammy.
yes.
People are writing in and saying, Dr. Rob looks so uncomfortable. And Dr. Rob is incredibly uncomfortable. Would it be possible that you could finish the last 35 minutes without me? Because I just feel like I need to do something for my shoulder other than sit here.
That is fine. And if you guys feel free to leave, I will not be offended. I might cry, but no, I'm just kidding. So,
I'm also on Friday night at 6 o'clock, and I don't mean again. And
no,
guys,
I could tell from the get-go that you were not feeling good. So I'm sorry.
Well, Tammy, I've sat here every Monday night for many, many years, so I feel like I could have. I don't mean to leave you guys, but I need to do some self-care.
Bye.
Love you guys.
Love
Thank
you.
you so
Talk
much.
to you
I'll see
tomorrow.
you later. And if you have
Okay.
a specific question for me, write it to Tammy, and she'll make sure I get it.
I will.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, so what do you think we should tell our elementary age kids about in-house separation? We always try to establish boundaries early in recovery. I love that you're asking this question rather than telling them everything. So I think it's fair because they're going to pick up on all the vibes. So I think it's totally fair to say, we're having some struggles. Mom and dad are working it out. We wanted to have our own rooms for now, and we're just going to do our best, but we still love you and all of this. We want to answer your questions and answer them age appropriate, and they don't need to know about, anybody's sex life or anything else. So, but I think it's really fair to just say, we're really struggling, and, but, we're doing our best to work through this. So, but thank you for asking. I get so many people that have already told their kids everything, and then the kids are traumatized, and we're looking for trauma therapists for the kids. So, but anything you can do to support open communication. If you're upset, we're upset too, but it's okay for you to be upset about this, but we're all going to get through this. I love my husband and we have been committed to make us work, but there have been numerous times when he isn't following the boundaries we agreed upon with a therapist. It's been 2 months, but could he still be in addict mode? Yes. Where he's still only worried about himself? Yes. It's only been 2 months. No offense. That's good, but that's still really early. And I don't know how long the pattern was, but I mean, like the last gentleman had been doing it for 30 years, like 2 months compared to 30 years. It's, that's a little bit of it. Not that you have to wait the whole 30 years. Could he be in addict mode? Yes. He says that he's in love with me, and I believe that, and wants to stay together. But if that were true, I think that following the boundaries so that I could eventually trust him again would be important to him. I've also experienced him getting short-tempered when I bring things up, even though this is still very new. I asked him to look at his phone last week and he agreed, but with annoyance, and a couple of minutes in, he said I can be on his phone for 5 more minutes before he went to bed, and that it'd be too anxious if he kept his phone downstairs with me. So if you haven't read Out of the Doghouse, please read that. And as Dr. Rob says, and throw it at him. But that gives very practical tools for rebuilding trust. But again, it's 2 months. So him getting support, you getting support. I'm glad you're here. He will not have emotional regulation. Here's what addiction does for us. It takes away our emotional discomfort. So we're able to numb out, we're able to escape into fantasy, we're able to dissociate. We don't have to deal with uncomfortable feelings. Now he's got uncomfortable feelings that he's going to have to deal with, and what's he supposed to do? And he's going to lash out. And part of it is I have this happen often where addicts are lashing out at someone else, they're really annoyed at themselves, you know? So, but we're really good at displacing the responsibility. We want to push it off on you. That's why there's this thing called gaslighting. So I think I'm really glad you're here. I would invite you to learn more about addiction, to understand what's going on for him in his brain that has been hijacked, and that all he cares about is, I need to do this, and oh, I'm trying not to do that. But it's okay to call him on, you know, that isn't working. We've given tools before where it's the 20-minute, you know, timeout. I want to come back and talk about this, or setting structured time where you're talking, like every Tuesday at 7:30 at night, we're going to talk for half an hour, and that's contained time in order to be able to do things. I would also check on the boundaries. If it's like, are they realistic boundaries? I've had multiple partners this last week call me and say, I told him if he ever lied again. And I was like, well, then he's never gonna, I mean, he probably flunked that, you know, day one. So I hope you've checked if the boundaries are realistic. I mean, hopefully they are. And if it's every one of them he's crashing through, then that's passive aggressive, and he's not committed to the process. So there's a bunch of things, but you know, there's early recovery. There's creating structured space so that you can have the conversations. You know, it's figuring out the boundaries, and you know, are they realistic? If they are, then you know, why is he, you know, crashing through them? It's difficult because it feels really personal, and like, I can't help but wonder if he just doesn't have the skill set yet. But he can learn. So if he doesn't have a good therapist that he's working with, problem, because again, I go back to it's the underlying issues. Stopping the behavior is like just the top, the little surface stuff, but it's getting to those underlying issues. We have lots of resources. I mentioned the Sex Addiction 101 work group that starts this Wednesday. Really good psychoeducation information to, you know, help guys work through that too. So. Okay, I don't have Dr. Rob here. It's really, really challenging. Okay, so next question. My husband is meeting with a CSAT and attending 12-step meetings sporadically. Okay, he says he's sober. And okay, we'll talk about that in a minute. And we're working towards full disclosure. I do see progress with his behavior towards me, but last night I asked him about some photos I found that he doesn't know I found, and he lied. Looked me right in the face and lied. Is it possible he's in recovery but still lying about some things? Is this a huge red flag and part of the growth process? He blew up at me and I didn't tell him I knew. Okay, addicts lie, and they get, so what we do in treatment and what we talk about a lot is doing it differently. So you can have, if you've lied to me, you need to come back to me within 24 hours, this 24-hour rule, and tell me that you lied. And it can be, I lied to you because I was afraid of your reaction. I didn't want to hurt you, whatever. And I always say, and it probably will be at 23 hours and 59 minutes the first time. But then hopefully, because he fessed up about the lie, then the next time it won't be that long. So sober, here's how I define it. Sober is, I'm just not doing the, you know, I'm abstinent. I'm not, so that's, I just am not doing that. And actually maybe abstinence, then sobriety, and then recovery. Recovery is a process, and it's a journey, and it takes time. He's very early in this process. Addicts lie about stuff that we don't even need to lie about. We lie to ourselves, you know. I'm glad that you are seeing some progress. Again, I'll recommend Out of the Doghouse. I would be really careful about full disclosure. I'm glad he's meeting with a CSAT, and I hope he's attending more 12-step, because you can just warm a seat in 12-step. So if he's working with a sponsor, he's going through the steps. I mean, if you're seeing progress with that, you know, he's got a 3-circle plan, the lying, I mean, I have had more partners that have said, I can handle the acting out more than I can handle the lying, because they, you know, we addicts lie about everything. So it's a process, and he isn't going to be able to not lie yet. He can learn, but it's going to take some time. So yeah, is it a red flag? I would say, you know, catching him is an issue. I think it would be fair to say, you know, I've caught you in some lies and I would like to hear your side of it. I do think having the structured time to talk about things gives you space to bring things up where you guys know it is, and it's not going to be, it could come at me at any moment. You know, I think, and it gives you a space to clear the air. So hopefully that's a little helpful. Do you know any tools or recommendations for a borderline narcissistic relationship? I do not know if I'm borderline, but at least I'm a love addict. I'm on CODA NSLAA, but it seems that I'm a little confused about the recovery literature in my case, or if I should end the relationship. Oh my gosh. So there's so much here. And we talk about prodependence, not codependence. You know, we really support healthy relationships. You can love a broken person, but that doesn't mean that you're problematic and meshed, you know, that you're part of the problem. So I would encourage you, and the borderline and narcissistic, there are psychologists and psychiatrists that can actually provide an assessment and really can help you figure out if you are. That might be useful for you. But I would start that podcast series that I mentioned, Sex, Love, and Addiction. There's all kinds of information on there. And we talk about sex addicts and love addicts and everything else. This is one, if you want to email me, Tami, Tami, at seekingintegrity.com, and let me know where you're located, and I'll see if I can help you find somebody who might actually be able to diagnose. But personally, I think every addict in active addiction is a narcissist. We're completely committed to our acting out behavior. So, you know, we show up as a narcissist. So rather than putting a whole bunch of labels, I would want to explore what's underneath all of that, and give yourself some space to see what fits. You know, there's so many different meetings and groups and information. You know, something might, as you're listening to it, you might go, oh, that resonates with me. That would be important information, you know, if it was me. So what would you say to someone who believes his SA is less serious than when he hears in groups or on here because he isn't acting out on a daily basis and would go months between actions, and he uses this as his reasoning for not moving forward with recovery with more intention, allowing his partner to prompt each step of the way, including attending meetings, etc. Okay, I want to throw my head down and slam it on my desk. So this is what I think, and you can take it or leave it, but this is like when you go to an AA meeting and somebody goes, well, I only drink beer, so I'm not as bad off as, you know, that person who they drink whiskey or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's what is the acting out doing to you? What is it doing to your loved ones? If you, in the 12 step, we talk about, if you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, what we have is the ability to be congruent. We're not all in different pieces. We have the ability to have healthy relationships with people. We have the ability to not hurt our loved ones. We have the ability to connect with people in a meaningful way, to not lie. All of those things are more valuable than all the gold on the planet. I'm serious. So what I hear is, I don't really want to change, and I'm going to keep giving you excuses and doing the very minimal amount, but I'm really not going to change. And that's sad. So honestly, what I hear when I hear an addict who is unwilling to step into recovery is someone who's going to be stuck, particularly if they're not acting out. So now you've got the worst scenario, because you can't act out and go to your comfort zone things, you know, because you've been busted on that, but you also don't have the tools of recovery that give you the serenity and freedom from that. So you're stuck in that horrible in between space. So for you as a partner, I would absolutely create safe boundaries for you, because if your addict is unwilling to change at some point, like the person earlier mentioned, after 37 years, you know, having to break up the relationship because the person was just not willing. And I believe partners deserve to love and be loved. And they deserve to have someone showing up honestly with them, not perfectly, because, you know, we're never going to do that. But to have intention, to be able to look you in the face truly, and not like the lying one before, but to look you in the face and to know that they are, you know, that they care, they're fully present, you know, and able to be a partner with you, you know, on the journey. So I'm sorry, that's sad to me. Okay, I learned my husband was a sex addict, problem with porn, multiple affairs, multiple prostitutes while he was in residential drug treatment last year. The disclosure was with a drug counselor present, but I did not receive any other support. Since then, I have learned more information. My question is there any value in having a therapeutic disclosure of all the sex acting out with a CSAT now? My husband has been in drug alcohol recovery for 9 months, but I've caught him in 4 relapses since then for drugs and porn. Okay, so here's the deal. I meant to say this with the disclosure earlier question too. So don't do a disclosure if there's going to be another disclosure and another disclosure and another disclosure. So ideally, the acting out has stopped. Not every partner wants a disclosure. They just know that there's a lot of stuff in there. Now, if there's something where you're vulnerable, you know, get an STD test. It was with, you know, your sister-in-law. I mean, whatever, you know, I mean, if there is a close, if there's a reason, like, you know, it happened in your bed, you know, get all new bedding, get new sheets, you know, like there's reasons why there may be certain things that you need to know, but you know, not you know, everybody thinks that, oh, I have to have a disclosure. You don't have to have a disclosure. You need to have what's going to be meaningful for you. And for some people, having a disclosure, you know, really in a therapeutic way, it sets the foundation for healing. So if you do want to move forward, it's an opportunity to set things right. My bigger issue is, you know, to me, he's not in recovery. So he's, you know, he's not been acting out with alcohol and drugs for a while, but, well, no, that's not true. Because he's had a relapse with drugs and porn. So to me, he hasn't had enough help to be able to really stop. So he's relapsing, and clearly in a residential drug treatment program, they don't address, you know, the sexual acting out. So, or they'll do a track or do a group or something like that. So holistically, what we do at seekingintegrity.com is address the co-occurring, and particularly when you're mentioning drugs and porn, that, you know, that makes sense. So, you know, the two probably are fused together. So he's working with a CSAT. That's good. Hopefully the CSAT has given him all the online assessments so that the CSAT has a lot of information about that. But a higher level of help, if he's continuing to relapse, then, you know, seeing the therapist twice a week, or doing individual and group with the therapist, whatever. But it's, you know, it's problematic because, you know, those are both challenging behaviors. And if there's a cycle where every so often, 9 months, every so often, it's like the pressure cooker, and then I relapse, and then I relapse, you know, you're going to be caught in that constant circle. So I hope he gets a higher level of help, and it may be just, you know, more with the CSAT. But I would hold off on disclosure and make sure you've got support, because if you're going to have a disclosure, the partner really, really needs to have a supportive therapist, ideally codependent aligned, you know, as part of the equation as well. So I can't afford to join the workshop, but I want to know if the workbook and book is something that would work for me if I do it on my own. Absolutely. You know, we just started the work groups because people were looking for it. And here's the interesting thing. I would talk to people and say, you know, do you have the Sex Addiction 101 book and workbook? And yes, I have it. Well, they'd had it for 3 months and it was sitting on the table, but they hadn't really done anything with it. So the work group provides an opportunity for the facilitator to share information topically as they go through the book, structured time, so that it's, and this is the homework for next week. So that's been very useful. And I think also just being, having the opportunity to be in a group and knowing you're not alone. I mean, I think that that's a powerful message as well. And it doesn't hurt Dr. Rob and Dr. David, you know, pop in and do a lecture during that time too. So can you become addicted to chat rooms? I tried to stop, but I could not. I lied to cover this up. That feels like just a different form of, you know, kind of like porn, where I'm anything that you can't stop. that has negative consequences that you're keeping secret, is problematic. If I was eating a chocolate cake every night and didn't tell my husband, well, he'd notice, but like that would still be problematic for me. So yeah, living in recovery means that I have integrity. I don't keep secrets. I don't lie to myself and tell myself that it's okay to do either. So I'm glad you're sharing here, and I hope you get help, around that as well. So my husband has been in recovery. I truly see a lot of changes, which feels great. I'm thrilled. I feel more connected to him than I have in many years. I've done so much work in therapy, and I know that that I'm stronger than ever. But when things go astray, it hurts so much more, and I don't know why. The other night he took a Viagra without telling me, then had sex with me. He told me after the fact. Something felt off during, so I honestly didn't enjoy the experience at all. And that was before I knew he took it. I usually do enjoy sex with my husband unassisted by Viagra. I got the Viagra for him, so it wasn't a secret that he had it. It was absolutely furious and triggered. I felt like I was exploited and used. I asked him why he did this, and he said, I wanted to see if I noticed. The incident has sent me into a tailspin. Suddenly, I can feel depression creeping through. We talked about it, and he says all the right things, but why is this hurting me and affecting me so badly? What can I do? I'm thinking this goes right back to the betrayal trauma. I'm like, I can totally understand you felt betrayed because he lied, particularly about something that was intimate with you. Like, I mean, he could have, if he was doing it in his integrity, said, I'm going to take a Viagra if it's okay with you, and I want to see if we notice a difference. And you could have said, okay, or not tonight. I mean, you would have had a choice in this. This was something that happened to you, which is what the betrayal trauma the betrayal happened to you. You didn't have a say in it. You weren't a participant. You are, it's being done to you. So I 100% understand how you feel that way. As far as the depression creeping through, I would encourage you. I'm glad you're here. I think I don't know if you've got a support therapist, but my therapist taught me to do some EMDR. Like I can do it to myself. And so I know you can do it online, so you may need to do a little trauma therapy, on this particular aspect. I would invite you. I'm a really practical person. I write lists. So you may be able to write, here's all the things that I've noticed that, because you said he's doing so good. We're feeling connected, and then go, and then this hurts. So I'm hoping that in the broad scheme of things, it feels like a speed bump and not a major mountain. I appreciate that you're feeling the depression and addressing that as quickly as you can. I mean, grieving that, here's another thing. It won't always feel this way. And hopefully he learns, but I also hope that, you've talked about it, and he's saying the right things. That's good. But I'm also hopeful that, he learns that, it's not, scheming and getting you to do something isn't going to work. So if he learns from this, that's a good thing, and that would be another in the pro column. So okay. Okay, so let's see if so my husband's father, who passed away 6 years ago, struggled with sexual addiction and alcoholism, which ultimately led to his death at 52. How it's sad. My husband has told me about a super unhealthy things his father did with him, such as leaving Playboy magazines on the coffee table and taking him cruising around apartment pools to ogle women. I feel resentful towards my husband's deceased father for contributing to his addiction, but my husband idolizes him. Can you give me advice or explanation? We talk about it like in the person that talked about, they've got kids, young kids at home, like a male addict, female partner, not always the case, but I'm just going to use those pronouns, but like he's still their dad, and so it's really easy to compartmentalize and only see the idealized thing, so So I can understand you're feeling resentment for causing and contributing to his addiction. I can understand your husband going, you know, my dad was great and he was there for me and all of this kind of stuff, and dismissing that. We get lots of guys in our treatment program who think they've had no trauma, have had nothing, you know, and it's still until you start unpacking all of that and understanding that, well, that isn't how, you know, that isn't how a dad is supposed to be with the kids, and they're supposed to be present. Like the person that was talking about mom earlier, that's not how mom is supposed to be, you know, with a child, you know. So unfortunately, those healthy relationships or unhealthy relationships, you know, can get set as that was how, you know, how it was. But you know, it's okay for you to understand that that wasn't it contributed to his addiction. I suspect something would have happened, you know, anyway. So while his dad's behavior was not healthy and was a problem, you know, at the end of the day, he may have been an addict anyway. So grieving grieving the fact that your husband didn't have a, you know, a great role model, you know, for a dad, you know, that is challenging. So that's not a great answer. Sorry. Oh, what is codependence? So Dr. Rob wrote a book. Sorry. I should just have these handy. Codependence. Hang on. It's pixelating. Codependence moving. I'll cut my background. Oh, there it is. Codependence moving beyond codependency. So great book. If you're a betrayed partner, please read this book. It's so different. Page 75 talks about different terms. We've got, oh, I think I just got cut off. Oops. Oh, I did it to myself. Sorry. So that book, Codependence Moving Beyond Codependency, is a different way of looking at partners without pathologizing them. So there is a couple of codependence podcasts on sex, love, and addiction that are very helpful, but really reframes that. Somebody said, I need a private therapist. Email me, Tami, Tami, at seekingintegrity.com. Tell me where you're located. I'll do my best to help you find a therapist that is a good fit for you. So, okay. Sorry that Dr. Rob had to take off. Thank you for hanging with me. Really appreciate it. And I will see you next week. And Dr. Rob hopefully is feeling better by then. Always grateful for all the questions and all the information you guys share. Bye, everybody.